Endorsement of you, Bassam. You ready?
Please do.
Good. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I was reading Scott Snyder's book last night, which I strongly recommend to all. And in it, he was talking about a certain company that will remain anonymous that begins with a K, who thinks that they are God's gift to consulting. And they basically convinced AT&T that they shouldn't waste their time in the cellular industry, that it wasn't going to make them any money, and in effect, AT&T had chances to really capitalize on it and didn't follow through because of the fact that these guys with the big report names gave them the bad advice.
Excellent. I hear that every day.
Right. So the good news is that people who help at the point where they actually understand the practical needs and the requirements are the people who you should be listening to when you're a carrier. And with that, Bassam, tell us what you guys do.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and start. To give you like a quick introduction, in fact, we're going to talk about 4G as you would expect, and like really what's going to happen next. Before I go there, kind of want to give a quick intro of my company, InCode. And InCode, really, I'm not sure how many of you guys heard about it, but we are exactly what Carl mentioned. We are the McKinsey of telecom, although we don't try to use that terminology a lot. But what we do a lot, we work with all the carriers, all OEMs, try to work on purely focus on telecom, on many strategic issues. So you look at AT&T embedded device model, we helped develop that. When you talk about clear oil go-to-market strategy, we were really the head team leading, driving that. We talk about Verizon go-to-market for other applications, we were involved heavily with that. So really we are like a brand, we're small, we're like 200 people, that's really huge. At the same time, we only do telecom strategy. So here's how we build our reputation among the industry. We consider ourselves like one of the largest when it comes to actual telecom strategy or management consulting firm focused purely on strategy. So we play with the whole ecosystem. We work with carriers, with OEMs. I don't kind of sell InCode to you guys as much as give you some background. At the same time, we work a lot with private equity houses who are trying to do investments. So the Altel deal, the Bell Canada deal, we're heavily involved in due diligence effort there as well. So let's talk more business right now. Talk about 4G and what we think of 4G. If you look at 4G, I mean, it's been there now, talked about for many years. So WiMAX been the early 4G technology to be deployed. I mean, there's today 450 planned deployments for WiMAX worldwide. So it's really taking advantage of being first to market there in terms of 4G. Clearwire in the US and Sprint been the big advocate of WiMAX. They claim to kind of have by end of this year 25 markets deployed with WiMAX technology and covering 30 million kind of subs as well. On the other hand, you have the LTE story. You have Verizon in the US pushing for it, trying to take advantage of their ecosystem. At the same time, trying to catch up on the HSPS story from AT&T. So if they don't do it, no one would. So what they realize that really have to be more proactively and do an aggressive nationwide deployments. So by end of 2010, they claim they're going to have 30 markets deployed with LTE. They claim to have 100 million covered subs to be also available. And I agree with the no way fact, in my personal opinion. But this is what they are trying to aggressively claim. Again, one of the claims they have is by end of this year, they're going to have Seattle and Boston with LTE coverage. And I live in Boston, so I just can't wait to see that happen.
Yeah, the 3 towers in Boston that are going to have LTE coverage. If you live near one, you'll be fine.
So this is kind of the story. Now, LTE advantage of it is established carriers, established players, they want to go that path because of the ecosystem. Everybody talks this LTE trend. So eventually what I believe is WiMAX is good for emerging markets, a lot of Middle East, a lot of Asia Pac, as well as Latin America will go to that from 2.5G to kind of WiMAX. Established carriers were like many of them like CDMA players and other emerging players will go the LTE path. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned, it's going to be a bigger ecosystem. It's going to be more defined, more established, so everybody's going to go that path. So we have companies like NTT Docomo, for example, in Japan being a big advocate of LTE as well. So we can see more of that happen from large players. So who's driving it, right? Is it a demand story, is it a supply story, is it somewhere between? If you want my personal opinion, working with all the carriers around their 4G strategy, it's more of a technology push than actual market pull or market demand. And there is, I have to accept or admit that there is like market demand for internet type of mobile applications, high bandwidth, video streaming. But realistically, I mean, it's growing and we see that. But you know what? It's not growing to the fast that I need LTE in my backyard by end of 2009. So, and they still can do that with HSVA. I still can do that with like really some 3G technologies. But with three key drivers coming from supplier front who's driving really LTE today. One of them is Verizon, or all the CDMA players. As I mentioned earlier, they are losing advantage against HSPA and GSM players. So they want to do whatever it takes to catch up. And when they catch up, they will jump again from 2.5G EVDO to 4G directly and passing a 3G path. And this is kind of their strategy. Another source of driver from supply side is actually infrastructure vendors. Like you have Lucent, you have now Motorola, you have Starent, who's merely a big advocate of LTE for one reason. They want to keep Huawei, ZTE out of the competition as much as possible. So that by them pushing for it faster, sooner than later, they will have more time to market advantage. Again, it's all these emerging players coming from different places. So that is what you see like Lucent for many years now being a big advocate of LTE as well. Third one is actual device OEMs. Many of these, Dell even included, and others in Google and the rest, trying to look for ways to generate new source of revenues. PC, like as a device, is dying. Laptops is not doing great. Now we have netbooks, we have ebooks, we have all these new emerging devices. So as a device OEM, I need to figure out a way to be more innovative, more creative in deploying new devices under the M2M umbrella, under the whole 4G umbrella. And that is a big driver there. So that's from the supply side. Demand side, we talk about different consumer segment. Now from the business segment, same story happening. There's a lot to talk about M2M for enterprise, a lot to talk about surveillance and video conferencing becoming a big deal. Today, Cisco's video conferencing system, I think, is around $36,000, so no one is really care for it because it's too expensive. Now, as that goes to lower cost, it's going to be more demand for it. So at that time, enterprise would deploy more and more video conferencing. And many other applications I can think of for enterprise that will drive higher bandwidth type of applications. And in the middle there is the actual government and the regulations. And we all know now we are reaching like a market in the US where it's very consolidated, very saturated, where Verizon and AT&T like more than 60% market share. So the role of the new FCC and new government for the next few years is really how can I bring more competition? How can I make more market more open and dynamics? So the whole stimulus program package came. The whole new ideas will emerge as well, like open access, net neutrality, because I want to kind of give fair opportunity for other players, smaller players like Metro, Leap, and others. So we're going to see policy and regulation driving toward more 4G adoption and trying to give even like more advantage to smaller players. If I'm going too fast, let me know, but I would like to have an interactive discussion after this. That's why I'm trying to wrap up my slides quickly, then I will open the floor for everyone. With that being said, now look at the actual 4G subscriber growth. And it's funny because a year and a half ago, I was working on a project for a large carrier trying to help size the opportunity of 4G. And as a consulting firm, we go and look at API, look at a bunch of other research places. And the funny part is like everyone has his own philosophy. Everyone has his own forecasts. Many of it is very aggressive forecasting of how many 4G subs we're going to have. And a few are really conservative. I'm more with the conservative side versus the aggressive side for many reasons. One of them is like 2G and 3G are not going away. So today I think we have like 4 billion total GSM subs worldwide. We have 260, 280 million of HSPA and 3G subs worldwide. So these guys are not going to disappear between day and night. So it's going to take some time to start switching between actually 3G, 2G to actual 4G transition. So that will take some time to happen. So I think it's going to take at least 3 years, in my personal opinion, to start to see some of that transition going on. Second is actually the ecosystem. We talk a lot about devices, talk a lot about chipset, and WiMAX been providing that for many years. But normally it takes 6 years, 5 to 6 years from the time standards are approved to actual mass market deployment, 6 to 7 years. So with LTE, it's really been like 2 years from now. So like you don't expect any mass deployment coming anytime soon. So if you want 5% opinion, it's not going to happen until 2014. If anybody tell you differently, like Verizon, I think that's too aggressive. And last thing that I was going to add is actually some of the regional government and different countries, and I was reading about the Asia Pac, some small emerging countries in Asia, the governments are pushing for WiMAX deployments for political reasons. They want to really keep their government alive, or they want to kind of boost the economy. So you're going to see more of 4G kind of deployments. So we cannot predict that how fast, how slow this is going to happen, and deployments. For all these kind of many reasons I have here listed, it's just really kind of very challenging to come up with more accurate forecasting for 4G subs. However, if you want to make your own forecast, be more on the conservative side than the aggressive side because of all these reasons. Now, there are other factors playing a role here which again driving more adoption. So as I mentioned, it's more a technology push than like a market pull, but at the same time, realistically, there are some initiatives out there to drive more of that customer adoption, make it more appealing for customers. And we talk about stimulus program package. Toledo Wire, in fact, we work with them a lot, and we helped them recently in their application to the broadband stimulus package. And it's now publicly news that they applied for it. The reason they applied for it, they're trying to kind of find a good business case behind deploying to more markets and get some funding from the government. Their current funding is not going anywhere, and they're really running out of cash. They have to look for other sources of income. So this is many other like players do the same thing with the stimulus program package. Open access right now, it's a big trend, it's a big hype. Companies like Verizon, in my opinion, with respect to them, it's more a marketing campaign for them than actual open access. AT&T comes as well and say, you know what, my network has been open for 10 years. So everybody can easily set that and actually do it. However, like, as you see more of a value now, as you see more carriers trying to bring more value to the network, they're going to try to implement a model which is my network, your device. So I'm going to open my network, I'm going to make it very efficient, very cost effective. I'm going to accept any device as long as like really certified by network. And I'm going to try to support more collaboration environment and partnership environment in the whole device and chipset industry, so I can really go to LTE faster. So the reason they are doing that, not really anything to help consumers as much as a selfish reason, and by creating that ecosystem based on open access, I can have more supporters, more people to buy in, and that's what they're doing right now. So you're going to see that. I mean, them being aggressive with the nationwide deployment, they're going to continue to endorse open access, build whatever it takes, innovation centers, certification centers, to make that really happen or artificially happen in a way that they can really build the ecosystem they're looking for, and they have more support to their network. Now we have bundled services as well as another story where many companies, we work a lot with Cox, for example, and Cox, as you all know, like deployed the new wireless services, and they're now, everybody starts thinking about their 4G options. And in fact, we're helping them right now as we speak in developing some 4G scenarios and options, what to adopt, when to adopt it, and how to adopt it. So many of the cable cos and telcos trying to kind of eat each other lunch and offer this quad play bundle, where really optimize the consumers, have better integrations between wireless and actual home devices. And one funny story I can tell you guys about Verizon as well, not to pick on Verizon all day today, but they just announced a few days ago that you're going to be able to use your handset device as a remote control to really play with, change channels on Fios TV and do some kind of like browsing. So this is more of a stickiness they're trying to add. You can only do that if you have Verizon wireless services. You can only do that if you have a Wi-Fi device. They're going to keep doing more of that, in my opinion, using LTE and 4G to make it even more sticky, to have the 4 quad play through that. And the other will do the same, cable cos and AT&T. The last one is the wholesale game, which is what Toledo Wire is doing today, and the CE devices. They're trying to see, you know what, I can drive more adoption for 4G by enabling more players to come to the game. So I'm going to kind of provide, again, a network where everybody can dial into and use as a new player to be able to offer more services to consumers. So now I think I have 2 more slides left, but quickly now, if you build, will it come? And the answer is, it depends, right? And the answer is that, well, but in phases. So the way I see that, how consumer will continue to adopt 4G devices is going to be really in phases. And phase one is nothing but what we heard about Kindle with Sprint, what we heard about Sony ebook with AT&T, where many low bandwidth devices, from netbooks to laptops to cameras, will be included as part of the device portfolio for many carriers, and PC cards included. And with that being said, the model will be totally different. Like today's ARPU on Kindle is around $2. And Sprint is happy with $2 for one reason. There's no subsidy involved. There's no CBGA cost. It's all like profits. Yeah, it's small scale, but in the future, if they build a scale of Kindle or ebooks, that will be really something they're going to be making some money out of with no cost. So that model of low-cost bandwidth is going to take at least 2-3 years to be really in a place where everybody today have this M2M talk and all the embedded device talk. So this is more the low bandwidth M2M and low bandwidth embedded devices, which can take another 2 years to become like more of a mass market play. The second phase talk more about what 4G is about, which is video-centric applications. I want 4G because I want more higher bandwidth type of applications to be used, including high definition video streaming, including like over-the-top videos as well, which I think more of it will come in the next phase, but going to start in that time frame, including like video sharing, video blogging, and video to push, and video on demand. So a lot of the video story will be really in the second phase. That will take some serious time to happen. However, the ARPU will be higher. There will be some kind of subsidy, but the cost will be higher as well for carriers. Now the last phase talk about which I call the late majority of 4G, which is going to be 2014 and up. By that time, you're going to actually see some kind of mainstream LTE deployment. So when you have that in place, now you can talk about the next gen and high bandwidth M2M type of applications. And it's more about seamless mobility, it's more about seamless integrations, more about moving video across different devices, and some of the video conferencing and health monitoring. So there will be a lot of enterprise consumer focus to it. And yesterday, in fact, Intel had a presentation talk about mobile medicine, talk about virtual or wireless canvases, and also like traffic monitoring. All these kind of high-band, advanced enterprise-based kind of application will start to be a reality around that time frame in the third phase. Please.
From a technology perspective, are there any fundamental differences in terms of capabilities emerging, whether it's via LTE or WiMAX? Is it more just a timing scale?
Zero difference. All of the M-based, they all have some MIMO capabilities. They're really almost zero difference. And the way we always look at it is, this is the era of where technology comes together in terms of harmonization. So you're not differentiated based on technology. You're differentiated based on your ecosystem, your actual economics, your actual backhaul capabilities, and really overall devices, user experience, and none of that above. And one thing I would like to add, which is really something we found during one of our strategic analysis for one project, is even bandwidth now is evolving as a model. Like before, bandwidth used to be a closed model where you get what you get, you don't argue. I mean, you have enough bandwidth, you play with it, you just get what you get, and there's a limitation for it. And the second phase is more like really vendor control bandwidth, where you say, I'm going to give you some flexibility with it, but you know what, I control it. I can allow you this, you have bandwidth caps, if you go beyond it, I'm going to charge you more, so I can't control all above. Now the third wave, which can be enabled by more of these embedded device model, is more user control bandwidth. Like I want to see it when I want to see it, on the device I want to see it, at the time I want to do it. So I'm going to consume my bandwidth the way I want. Don't tell me where and how and over what device. And that is kind of the overall ultimate user experience in terms of personalizations and like interactivity. So I would think that a lot of these traditional devices are going to disappear by time after time. You're going to see more interactive devices. From the low end, or the low size, will be your super phone or smartphone, will be your netbooks, these are called emerging devices. And then from the big side, you can see a TV will become more interactive TV. So the whole idea of ITV or like interactive TV, internet connected TV, will become really a mass market around the time of 2000, maybe 13, 14. I will say 214, in fact, to be realistic. And if you want my opinion, I think the winner will be Apple. And I think Apple will figure it out before anybody else. This is my opinion. We can argue about that. Okay, so I think the last two slides left here. What's going to happen to voice? And we talked about video. We talked about the phases of video adoption. Now, what's going to happen to voice? I mean, yesterday there was a good also presentation on voice over 4G over LTE. So I'm not going to talk in too much depth, but I'm going to give some people update based on what also I analyzed. Now, I mean, as you know, like LTE and 4G and carriers, I think Verizon spent $20 billion developing LTE network so far. So all this money is not going to support voice. All this money going to support high bandwidth intense applications and new pricing models. So voice, to some extent, will be kind of left behind. Will be kind of no one going to care about it for now, as long as really 2G, 3G network is available. By the time we start to switch them off, turn on 4G as a replacement, and it's going to take another 2 to 3 years. At that time, we can have an IMS-based solution already available. Now, the IMS-based solution been talked about for many years. I worked on a project, in fact, with a big vendor who at that time Lucent promised them to have a VCC, voice call continuity, which is voice over IMS, to be ready in 2006. Believe it or not, it was not ready. There was a big handoff, seamless handoff problems. Till today, I think they solved that problem, but the overall processing time is still slow. So there are some challenges with IMS. There is, I mean, a lot of buzz about IMS in the last 3 years or 4 years. But I'm very confident, like when we get to at least a good takeoff phase with LTE, you're going to see the right requirements for processing time and infrastructure available for IMS to be part of LTE deployment. And when that happens, I mean, VCC will become more of the reality all over again. And at that time, you start to switch off some of the 2G, 3G voice network. But it could be even after 2013. It could be something really happen at later phase. The only way they will do it earlier if you find Skype or Google Voice coming up quicker with the over-the-top voice, like using internet. If you start to see that threat coming faster, you have to start deploying some either like leveraging your 4G network to deploy more voice as part of your bundle, or for once you can keep it separate, but you cannot survive on that for a long time. Because if you keep it separate, you pay more money for actual dual mode device. You know, device talk 2G and device talk 4G data at the same time. And LG and Nortel this last week announced like a successful demonstration of handoff between CDMA and LTE when it comes to voice and data. So they start to trial that. They start to see like you can really do a device where it has a voice component with an antenna for voice, and you have an actual 4G antenna as well. Now there's a middle solution here, which is, if you want my personal opinion, this might not go anywhere, but it's good to try that and just do nothing. And the middle solution is this, what we call it, voice over LTE using generic access. And that initiative just came last year, and was really pushed by a lot of infrastructure vendors, including Ericsson, Lucent, Sonos Networks, and a bunch of others. And the idea of that is going to be UMA-based, and we're going to try to use the current voice infrastructure with some kind of Wi-Fi capabilities. Now, if you want my personal opinion, this hybrid model, I mean, they claim that by next year they're going to have something really working out there, but so far not a single carrier bought into that yet. There's no adoption, no standardized view of that yet in place, where by the time they do that standardized and adoption, I think you'll be ready for IMS. So last thing is like the slide I was going to talk about is just there's no one size fits all for 4G. Yeah, technology are coming together, but doesn't mean business models are coming together or even strategic option scenarios. So when you look at all these things, and again I speak from experience working all these different options and trying to help many players to pick the right ones for them for their strategy. You have carriers who come out and say, you know what, I don't want anything. I want to be a wholesale player. I want to focus on the wholesale. I don't want to worry about any retail, headache retail challenges. Clearwire is a good example of Sprint. So help me develop an actual strategy to go to market with a wholesale model. So in fact, we helped some companies doing that, and the idea was to develop the most cost-effective network
where I'm going to keep it and make it available to MVNOs 2.0, and we'll keep it also available to content providers and other smaller carriers to use. It's going to be most efficient, very cost effective. I can provide the best quality of service, and I'm going to charge you like you can lease it from me, and I can charge you that. So that model, in my opinion, is currently what Clear Wireless is trying to succeed with, and we're going to see in Sprint as well as a new identity for Sprint, and we're going to see how far they can go with it. Second model is more about the retail model, which is embedded device model, where AT&T and Verizon are big players and say, you know what, I want to still kind of own the network. I'm going to support open access, bring many device. I'm going to sell it in my own retail store. Could be ebook, could be anything. I'm going to have my retail store go beyond handsets, become consumer electronics like store, like Apple store. So at the same time, I'm going to have the end control because they have the end touch customer. I have the network. So you as a device OEM, you don't have anything. I mean, you try to play with me in my rules, but I'm still going to control the network, control the actual last mile to customer. So that is what the LTE Verizon story is going to be about, and that is what AT&T, in my opinion, HSBF is going to be about, and eventual LTE. So really, it's nothing new there, in my opinion. The open access is just a piece to package the deal for them, nothing more than that. The convergence play is another play where companies like, again, we talked about Cox, we talked going to wireless, we talked now about Comcast figuring out the wireless solution. But that convergence play is, what can I do to bundle, to expand my offerings using 4G? Like, I mean, I've been struggling a lot. I mean, should I use Clearwire like what Comcast has been doing? Should I build my own like Cox is trying to do? And which one would work better with me in terms of 4G strategy? And we hope, again, multiple people doing multiple scenarios. But the idea of convergence is I want to compete against the other guys. I mean, Verizon has now everything. As a cable company, I want to survive. I can't only focus on cable and leave wireless away. So you need to find a way to really compete head-to-head with Verizon. So now becoming more of a converged application offering. How can I integrate fixed line with wireless network? And that is really what it's going to be about convergence play. Last one is the rural broadband, rural market. And many players, and many, in fact, with the ILACs and CLACs today, they are adopting 4G for one reason. They want to go to rural wireless. And that's why many of them apply for a stimulus package and other things. But the long story of that one, I'm going to try to offer a new model based on low cost, addressing rural markets, and with my new offerings of 4G. So that's kind of like limited to some, in my opinion, like players could be like Frontline, could be like Quest, could be companies like of that scenario who would like to go to wireless. So like Quest just shut down their wireless services, but Frontline would be one potential company who would like to go to wireless, offering wireless using WiMAX to rural broadband areas. Last sentence I was going to say, then I'll pass it back to you guys for questions, is the more, it's more and more we are starting to see the wireless carrier business is literally nothing but the airline business. And what I mean by that is we're going to eventually start to see tiers of services where like quality of service differentiation is called, where you're going to have still a low cost for a basic service. But everything you want to add to it, like a video, like a voice, like an extra minutes, extra bandwidth, is give you an extra money. You want the airplane, you pay for a ticket. You want like a Diet Coke, you pay for it. You want the exit seat, you pay for it. It's going to be a similar model where I'm going to give you everybody, but I'm going to customize it based on each one of you so I can make the most money out of each one of you. And that will be the model that will be emerging in the future as a part of the model. And that's really it. So now we can go to Q&A, and I would like to, I think we have hopefully 15 minutes with the chat. Please.
I'm pretty heavily involved in handset design, especially in the baseband. And I have two related questions in how this layering of 2G and 3G and 4G infrastructure will affect the baseband design. Specifically, number one, will the handsets attempt to use all of the different networks simultaneously? That is it reasonable the handset would say, simultaneously, I want to be talking voice on the 2G band and dealing with some video download on the 4G band, and I'm going to be browsing the internet on the 4G band as simultaneous modes of use.
Again, for a second.
In the same handset at the same time, 3 subsystems running there. That's question number 1.
You want me to answer that or wait to that?
Yes, go ahead.
I think it is happening, right? There's a lot of talk, as I mentioned earlier, about what do you do with voice, where you have to find a solution for like a dual mode device, where you have kind of 2 antennas, one for 2G, one for like 3/4G, for data and video. So it is really happening. As I mentioned, there are some trials already in place. Now, I don't know who's the OEM for the actual device. I can find that for you. But that needs to happen if you want to support voice over 4G till IMS is ready. So there's no other option but to have that in place. So right now, what my thinking is, as I mentioned, for the next 2 years, 4G is going to be more about PC cards, about embedded devices, more than about handset replacements for 3G. So they're not worried about that for the next 2 years, but they are planning for this for sure.
But there's a real significant issue with that, and that is that if you're trying to build a compact device, putting multiple radios in that device, it's really problematic. Multiple antennas, multiple radios, multiple systems.
It's expensive, I think.
Well, it's expensive, but it's also an RF problem, and what ends up happening is the radios don't work as well. You're sub-optimizing the device.
That really is question number 2, which is, if you've decided that these operate simultaneously, certainly they're going to operate in the same device. If they're going to operate simultaneously, then it affects the decision about whether you have a legacy 2G physical subsystem plus a legacy 3G subsystem plus a new 4G subsystem, or you move towards more of a software-defined radio approach, which you attempt to run all of these different protocols on the same hardware, which becomes somewhat more challenging if you say, I want to actually time slice my software-defined radio such that I can maintain full bandwidth running 4G on the same hardware that's running full bandwidth running 3G on the same hardware that's running full bandwidth running with my 2G program.
Yeah.
That seems like a hard problem.
And I think I can tell you,
It's impossible.
yeah, I was going to say, like, a year and a half ago, I worked with a vendor who, software-defined radio vendor. In fact, I can tell you the name, Vanu. And Vanu came with this whole solution for software-defined radio for many years.